कैसा है ऐसे कर्सिव में? सूखी बिल्ली आ गई, सूखी बिल्ली। हटिए, सूखी बिल्ली आ गई। जब तुम ही बनाओ, खुद बनाओ, पहले ही बनाओ बस।
A very good morning to everyone.
Good morning. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, madam.
Good morning, sir.
I am Sohail from Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh,
Okay.
from the Department of Civil Engineering.
Welcome, sir. Welcome to the program. Okay. Very good morning and New Year's greetings to everyone. I, Dr. Charumitra Patil, Program Coordinator and Senior Lecturer of Department of Architecture and Interior Design, welcome you all on behalf of my department and the Institute, Government Women's Polytechnic College, Bhopal, in this AICT-sponsored one-week short-term online training program on sensitivity towards environmental sustainability in technical education. It is my pleasure to welcome our distinguished and our distinguished speakers who have joined from various reputed and renowned institutions and organizations, including IITs, NITs, and renowned private universities, NGOs, and industries, and who have given us the time for this program. I also welcome our participants who have joined from various regions of India, including Andhra Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Himachal Pradesh, Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, Tamil Nadu, and all many of the regions of the India. I again welcome all my departmental faculty members, my colleagues, and overall, above all, our respected principal, our motivation, our inspiration, Dr. K.V. Rao sir, in the this inaugural ceremony of this program. We are grateful to All India Council of Technical Education that they have approved this program for financial assistance and make this event happen. This event earlier was planned in an offline mode and was planned to give maximum hands-on exposure through workshops and site visits, but due to phases of lockdown due to corona pandemic restricted us to online mode. Still, it is our endeavor to make this program more practical and learner oriented. So about this program, environmental sustainability is a much talked about term and a well-known term, and we all know about environmental sustainability, but what are the these environmental sustainability techniques, initiatives, and skills? We are not much aware about it, and this term or this environmental sustainability term is much more relevant in present scenario uh, than ever. And actually, this program is designed for the participants to motivate, to contribute towards the sustainable environment. Now, this pandemic situation, though affected every dimension of our life, uh, uh, like a socio-economical, biophysical, environmental, every dimension of life. But what is positive about this pandemic situation is that now we understood the criticality of sustainable environment, but still we are presume ourselves incapable of doing sustainable construction practices, construction technologies, and skills. But many a drop makes an ocean. बूंद बूंद से ही घड़ा भरता है, और each one of us can contribute at local level toward the sustainable environment. The only thing is commitment to ourselves. So let us, with the beginning of this year, we pledge for the contribution, whatever we can make toward the sustainable environment. So now I would like to call upon Dr. Aradhna Hans ma'am, HOD, Department of Architecture and Interior Design, to welcome our speakers and participants. Over to you, Aradhna ma'am.
Thank you, Charu. Respected principal, sir, a panel of renowned speakers, participants from different states and from other Pradesh also, and industry persons who all took out the time to participate in this training program, and my faculty and my colleagues, faculty staff members. Very good morning and a warm welcome to all of you, and we welcome you to this training program on sensitivity towards environmental sensitivity in education. Like as Chakra Madam also said, it is a much talked term nowadays. Sustainability is discussed, discussed in every academic, business, or political forums. Usually this term is being discussed. But why? Why at all we need to discuss or give so much importance to this term? Are we not following sustainable practices? It is a big question. But as far as we claim, we are the most intellectual species of this earth. Like in this pandemic time also, all movements are restricted, but still we are connected and we are organizing this huge training program. So what is the lacking? So this question should be addressed, and sustainability is it has many dimensions, and I am sure many the panel speakers will be doing, and through interaction will be knowing about the sustainability and its various dimensions. So I will not talk about much on this, but I look forward to a very successful training program, and I am sure that you all will have a very found every session interesting and very informative, and I'm much sure that by the end of this training program, you all will be enriched with knowledge and skills. So have a good time, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Aradhana ma'am. Now I would like to call upon our principal, Dr. K.V. Rao sir, for welcome speech and announce official opening of the program.
Charu, I'm audible now? Charu?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of AICT and Government Women's Polytechnic Bhopal, I would like to welcome all the renowned speakers as well as all the participants. It's a great privilege for us that AICT has sponsored this program, and this is a one-lead program. Actually, we had planned to conduct this program at our institute level. We had planned a number of hands-on practices also, but due to the pandemic situation, we are not able to do so. Anyhow, I am sure that the speakers, the renowned speakers, will pass on their experiences, will pass on the knowledge to us, and will give good results. Anyhow, on going through this speakers list, I have seen that there are a number of persons from IITs, NITs, from universities, and persons from industries also. A person who is a very famous person who is nowadays making mud blocks and constructing and having a good practice at Bhopal. And I am going through this list. There is Shikha Patidar Madam also. Anyhow, I hope so that this will be a very good program. Anyhow, I would like to inform you one more thing, that energy saving is also very important for the sustainable environment. Right now, we had installed earth air heat exchanger, which is that is a pipe which is located at 3 meters below ground level, and from there we are using the hot air as well as the cold air from the ground. Hot air is taken up during the winters, whereas the cold air is taken up during the summers. Along with this, we had prepared a passive ventilation system also, and we had not used any electricity supply for this. What we thought that earlier, whenever we will get a chance of having this thing, this workshop at Bhopal, we thought to have your visit. Unfortunately, we will make sure to have a virtual visit of this workshop also, which we had developed at Bhopal, and this is one of its unique thing which we had installed at Bhopal at our institute. Anyhow, I hope you will have a good briefing from all the speakers, and Charu and Aradhana Madam, I wish you all the best, and all the participants all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Rao sir. Everyone is more or less aware about the environmental issues and challenges uh, and their consequential impacts. But how many of us are aware about technologies, traditional skills, our construction techniques, and other sustainable practices? And how many of us are actually implementing or adopting or suggesting these practices? So this program is primarily designed to sensitize the participants toward environmental sustainability by providing them knowledge about green skills and motivate them to contribute towards sustainable environment. At the end of this program, it is expected that the participant will be able to suggest or recommend or adopt uh, some sustainable technologies and skills, and can demonstrate some selective skills on sustainable development. About the schedule of the program, uh, we are fortunate that we have experts who are extensively working in the sustainable development field, and they have given us their precious time for this program, and we will make it sure that we would get best benefit of this program in all the 6 days. So the schedule is topics covered in this program are traditional knowledge, green technologies, sustainable construction practices, resource management, sustainable societies, and all this will covered on all 6 days. The day one will focus on environmental challenges, and the speakers would be Dr. Manmohan Kapshe from Manit Bhopal, Dr. Tej Karki from Lovely Professional University, Jalandhar, Dr. V.N. Bartaria from Lakshmi Narayan College of Technology, Bhopal. Day 2 and 3 will have sessions on sustainable construction, and the speakers would be Dr. Ram Satish Pashupaliti from IIT Roorkee, Srimati Nutan Bhajekar from NGO Inora, Pune, Dr. V.N. Bartaria from Lakshmi Narayan College of Technology, Bhopal, Architect Jay Thakkar from SEPT University, Ahmedabad, Architect Shikha Patidar from Vinyas, Bhopal, Architect Tapas Upadhyay from Agar Design Studio, Bhopal. The day 4 and 5 will focus on resource management, and the speakers would be engineer and planner Shivranjini Subramaniam from NGO Environment Management Center, Mumbai, Shri Vinay Khare from VR International, Bhopal, architect Surinder Baga from founder Sakar Foundation, Chandigarh, Punjab, architect Shirish Ganu from NGO Inora, Pune. And the last day we will have session on sustainable societies, and the speakers would be Dr. Krishna Kumar Dhote from Manit Bhopal, architect Smriti Saraswat from IIT Roorkee, and Dr. Deepali Kulkarni from ITM Vadodara. So this is about the schedule of all the 6 days, and shortly we will start our session of the day. Here I want to announce some to the participant that the attendance will be taken twice in a day. The link will be provided to you to record your attendance, once in the lunch break and once at the end of the session of the day. So participant will be given half an hour to record their attendance. So I think our first speaker will join within 10 minutes, and we have to wait for that. So just if the participants want to interact with us or introduce themselves, they are open.
Hello,
Can I
ma'am.
talk?
I'm Kimmi Prasad from Jharkhand, Government Women's Polytechnic, Ranchi.
Yeah, ma'am. Welcome, ma'am.
Ma'am, ma'am, this is architect Arjun Hablani from Indore.
Welcome, sir.
Myself is Dr. Suhail Ayub from Aligarh Muslim University, Aligarh, Department of Civil Engineering.
Okay, so welcome, sir. Very, very warm welcome.
Myself, Dr. Harsimran Chadda from Indore.
Welcome, ma'am.
Myself, architect Manita Saxena from Indore.
Oh, welcome, ma'am.
Myself, architect Manita Saxena from Indore.
Welcome. So this program is sponsored under AICT Quality Improvement Scheme (AQIS), and it was sanctioned during AQIS 2019-20. Uh, uh, but due to this corona pandemic and certain other issues, it was not possible to do it on offline mode. But we will surely, if it goes very well, and we will plan next time for the offline training. And I think it will be a great opportunity to have this program offline also. We have very interesting topics in this program, and I think you all will be having your good this take away from this training. I request all the participants that if your colleagues or some known person have also registered for this program and not joined yet this program, please inform them to join the program.
Ma'am, can we have the crisp summary of what this program is all about?
Pardon, your voice is not very clear.
I said, can we have the crisp summary of what this program is all about? Because I'm joining for the first time.
Okay, I have already given brief about the program. The program is about the skills and practices which are required for sustainable development, and we start the program with some global issues and problems and challenges, and then we will have lectures on sustainable techniques, traditional techniques, vernacular architecture, then sustainable practices, some construction technologies, and some reduction, recycle, or reuse of waste. This kind of topics are included in this program. So all will be about the sustainable development and to contribute toward the sustainable environment. I see that Dr. Dhote and Shikha ma'am are expert speakers, and they have also joined this program. I welcome you, ma'am, and Dhote sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, madam, for inviting me for this
Thanks, ma'am, that
program.
you have given your time for this program. May I know your discipline and background of the participant who have joined till now?
Good morning, madam.
Yes, sir. Good morning.
I am Gautam Bhattacharya, senior lecturer from textile background, from Institute of
Okay, sir.
Textile Technology, Chaudwar, Cuttack, Odisha.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, madam.
So this is a multidisciplinary training program, and actually there are less participants from architecture, civil, or planning background, but maximum participation is from the other disciplines, and that's what was the this aim about the program, that the this responsibility is not only of the architects or planners or engineers to make the environment sustainable, but each one of us have equal responsibility about this environment.
Good morning,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, ma'am.
Madam, architect strength is slowly growing up now. Some of our colleagues are already joining it. I think some of the architects are now getting connected.
Sir, your voice is coming very low.
I said you had wished that architect strength was low, so now more and more architects are joining slowly.
Okay, so today's first speaker, Dr. Kapshe sir is with us, and he has joined this program. So welcome, Kapshe sir. Uh, Dr. Manmohan Kapshe, Professor, Department of Architecture and Planning, Maulana Azad National Institute of Technology, Bhopal. Dr. Kapshe's specialization is in urban planning, energy and emissions, climate change. He has more than 24 years of teaching experience at different institutes and guided more than 10 PGs and PhD projects. He has 13 publications in international journals and 17 in national and international conferences. His contribution towards environmental sustainability is recognized at national and international level by awarding him certificate from Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change for contributing to IPCC work, receiving Nobel Peace Prize in 2007. Letter of recognition from the Prime Minister of India for contributions to the work of United Nations Intergovernment Panel on Climate Change 2008. Fellowship from Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad for doctoral research work from 1998 to 2003. He has completed more than 20 national and international research consultancy projects. I welcome Dr. Manmohan Kapshe sir and invite for the expert lecture. Over to you, Kapshe sir. Please take charge of the session. Thank you.
Good morning. Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let me start introducing the topic in a broader sense, where we would like to discuss sustainability from the point of view of climate change. Because what I see today is when we are discussing sustainable development, especially from the point of view of our urban environment and cities, then one of the biggest threats that we have to our existence is changing climate. I would have this session where I would like to make it interactive. It would be good if you have any questions and you can type it in the chat box. That would help me. And I would request Charumitra madam that if somebody can keep on compiling those questions, then I would be either happy to take them in between if I find that any question which is directly relevant to what I'm speaking pops up on screen. Or then I would be otherwise interested in taking those questions at the end of the session. And I understand that I can take about 50 minutes, Charumitra madam. Is that okay? मैं 50 मिनट तक बोल सकता हूं? आपका माइक्रोफोन ऑफ है.
Yes, sir.
50 मिनट सफिशिएंट है बोलने के लिए?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. And is it okay if I alternate between English and Hindi? Will that be preferred? Or should I speak more in Hindi, less in English? How would it be, depending on the audience that you have?
Yes, sir. I think the participants are more from other regions, but I think mixed medium will be okay.
Mixed medium would be okay. And there are people who may not understand Hindi, so then I'll continue in English. If anybody finds any difficulty or any particular aspect is to be explained, please do let me know and I would be happy to explain. Let me share my screen. I'm just trying to do that. Is it visible to everybody?
Yes, sir. It is visible.
Okay. Fine. So the topic for today's discussion that I'm picking up is climate change and human settlements. Thank you, Charumitra madam, for introducing me. I am a professor at Maulana Azad National Institute of Technology, Bhopal, and I've been teaching for almost last 30 years. Climate change is an area where I do most of my research, and I relate to both the aspects of climate change and human settlements. That is there a possibility that human settlements can contribute in reducing the climate change? And the second part, that if climate change happens, then how would the human settlements be affected? These are the two major concerns which we have when we discuss sustainability of the human settlements over a longer period of time in view of changing climate. I would always start with understanding the basics of climate change. That is where I start in all my presentations. Then we would go on to discussing what can be done about climate change and why is it difficult. I would have some discussion on climate change and human settlements in general, that is applicable to all human settlements. And then I would have Indian perspective. I would take a few case studies of likely actions that we can work out. In the end, I would leave you with a few questions that remain unanswered, because we don't have answers to all the problems that we face. And we are continuously evolving and trying to find out answers to the problems that our human settlements are facing. To understand the basics, it's primarily actually a global environment to local environment processes and interaction that we are discussing. Here what we are trying to say is, if the changes in solar input happen, we would have changes in the atmospheric composition and circulation happening, changes in all other terrestrial cycles, like we have hydrosphere, or if we have hydrological cycle, changes in the ocean, changes on the land surfaces, all are important for us. And these are part of broader global environmental processes and interactions. So a climate change, and I would request everybody, if you can keep your microphones mute, or I would request the organizers to keep everybody on mute so that we can continue uninterrupted. Thank you. So what we are saying is, we are discussing a global environment process and interactions study, and we are saying that human settlements come at the interface of it, where they are contributing to these processes and interaction changes, and they are facing the effects of these changes. So the interaction is two-way, where we are creators of the problem and we are facing the problem as well. What we are trying to say over here is, we have a situation on a timeline that we had done something historically, because of which certain changes have happened. The climate over past has changed. We have to observe those changes. We have to project what would happen in future and take actions accordingly, so that we are able to prevent these changes from happening. As I said, one. And second, if these changes happen, then we are prepared and ready for it. So we are working on a continuum of a timeline where we have history, we have present, and we have future. What we need to do is, we need to take the historic observations of all different climatic phenomena, that is like temperature, precipitation, sea level, air circulation, extreme events. Try and understand why those are happening and are they changing. If these things are changing, then what would happen in future, and how do we prepare ourselves for it? Let's take a stock of what do we need to know for understanding climate change. What we need to understand from the point of view of climate change is what causes it. Before that, we need to know what climate change is. Very often we confuse it with the changes in the weather or changes in the season. These are regularly happening. Weather phenomena changes every day, morning, evening, every hour, every minute. Morning it was sunshine, in the evening it rained. That's change in the weather. We also have changes in the season. I have got a pop-up on screen that there is a voice problem. Am I audible to others? Is my voice clear? Can somebody tell me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. It is clear, sir. It
Right.
is clear, sir.
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. So what I'm saying is the weather is ever changing. Seasons, we have a predictable change. We know that there would be winter, there would be summer, there would be rains. So we have an identified duration in 1 year when we know that the seasons would change. But when we come to climate, it is fairly constant. We know that climate of a place is warm, climate of a place is cold, it is humid, it is dry, it is cold. Then we say that, oh, that place is generally very humid. That place has hot, dry climate. Right? So the climate is a constant thing which has been given to us because it is an average of changes in weather and season over a long period of time. All our activities evolve around this. It is, if we are celebrating Holi, if we are celebrating Deepavali, if we are going to have Makar Sankranti, all that is on the basis of the climate that we are going to face or we have been facing over the years. The fundamental problem is we have identified that certain activities of us, like emitting greenhouse gases, is going to change the climate of a place. And that would be disastrous because all our activities, agriculture activities, our clothing, our infrastructure, our houses, our festivals, everything is dependent on the climate that we have assumed to be constant for a place. If that climate changes, the fundamental on which all our actions are resting has changed. So our actions will have to change. That is the inevitability of the problem. And what is responsible for it is primarily 6 gases that human activities are emitting into the atmosphere. These are carbon dioxide, which is mostly from burning of fossil fuel, methane, that is also primarily from our industrial activities and somewhat from agriculture and animal husbandry. NOx, we have from our industrial activities, fertilizers, PFCs, industrial activities, HFCs, industrial activities, SF6, primarily from aluminium and other manufacturing. These 6 gases are responsible for trapping the heat which is going out from the Earth's surface, increasing in average temperature of the Earth. How is it happening? It is happening, which is called a greenhouse gas effect, where we have incoming solar radiation, which is hitting the Earth's surface. Some of it is getting absorbed, some of it is getting reflected. This reflected solar radiation is actually getting trapped in the greenhouse gases. Now what we need to do is the surface long wave radiation which is going out and is outgoing long wave radiation is getting trapped in the greenhouse gases. We need to reduce these greenhouse gases in the upper air atmosphere so that the outward solar radiation is able to go to the space and thereby temperature of the Earth's surface or the atmospheric temperature is maintained. We've been listening that temperature of the Earth's surface has been ever changing. There are glacial ages, there are ice ages, the temperature of the Earth's surface increases and decreases. That's normal. We don't need to worry about it. Earth would take care of itself. Could this warming be natural? We are observing more. But is it natural? Do we need to worry about it? And if we take about 1,000 years of data, we find that there have been fluctuations. We have a recorded temperature and we have a recorded carbon dioxide range. So we have greenhouse gases in the atmosphere which have been there. These are essential. We are not saying that all greenhouse gases need to go, because they are helping us maintain the temperature of the earth, which is necessary for our survival. The only thing is the change, the fluctuation of greenhouse gases matches with that of temperature change. That means concentration of greenhouse gases helps in increasing the temperature. Now, when we look at what is happening over last short period of time, the concentration of the gases has gone substantially up. And as a result, what we are expecting is the temperature would also increase substantially. That would become a big problem. We have an unprecedented concentration of greenhouse gases which have never been recorded in history. So the temperature response with this is going to be abruptly very high. Now let's take a look at, if we are looking at land and ocean temperatures over last few years, we can see that there is a strong increasing trend since late 70s or 80s recorded. Now, this is a cause of worry. Just the temperature increase, will that be a problem? We are already seeing evidences that the glaciers are melting away. Now, if the average temperature throughout the year remains higher by a few degrees, Earth is very, very big and the natural systems are very, very sensitive. So half a degree or 1 degree average temperature increase is huge. Just 2 degrees centigrade temperature is going to wipe away most of the glaciers. There would be no snow available on the top mountains, which would actually feed your rivers during the summer. The perennial rivers in India, Ganga, Yamuna, and all emanating from Himalaya, actually receive their summer water because of the glacial belt. Now, if these glaciers are going to melt away, then the seawater is likely to increase in volume. So the coastal settlements would be threatened. So there is a series of events which we would have as a problem for sustaining our settlements. So it's not only the temperature that we are worried about, but the climate change is an all-encompassing term putting together all related effects of increasing temperature. What we have done is we have tried to understand this phenomena with the help of climate models, which divide the Earth in horizontal as well as vertical grid for identifying upper air atmospheric phenomena. We have tried to put the likely changes in the carbon dioxide concentration or greenhouse gas concentration. This term is again interchangeably used. Let me inform everybody that we have carbon dioxide as a measurement unit. As I said that there are 6 gases. There is methane, there is oxides of nitrogen, sulfur hexafluoride. All of these gases have got a different warming potential. So taking a weighted average of these, multiplying these gases and their concentration by their global warming potential, we get a unit which is called carbon dioxide equivalent. Right? So at some places you would find a mention in greenhouse gas concentration in terms of carbon dioxide equivalent. At some places you would find carbon dioxide, and at other places you would see carbon concentration. So it is C, carbon, CO2, carbon dioxide, or CO2e, which is carbon dioxide equivalent concentration. You have to be a little careful in reading those numbers. So it is actually the carbon dioxide equivalent concentrations which are worked in computer models for projecting what would happen to future climate if the concentrations increase. And what we see is if we have high emission ratios, the predictions are as high as 4 degrees centigrade above the normal with very high concentration. We have a possibility of somewhere an increase between 1 to 1.5 degrees centigrade, below which it is not possible to limit the temperature increase. With best of the efforts, we would be able to limit it to 1.5 degrees centigrade increase. which we are targeting for through international negotiations, or 2 degrees centigrade. And beyond 2 degrees centigrade increase is going to be a disastrous increase. That is what these climatic models are predicting. Therefore, all efforts are that we limit the concentration of greenhouse gases to such a level that the temperature of the Earth's surface does not increase more than 1.5 degrees centigrade in next century. The mathematical models are correct because what we tried doing with the mathematical models, there are different agencies working all through the world, working on good quality climate models, and where they are trying to predict whether the natural, that is volcanic plus solar, and the observed values with or without anthropogenic forcing, that is if we are trying to put the GHGs, whether they match or not. So the red line shows us the anthropogenic with natural, volcanic, solar, GHG, everything put together, what the model gives us. The black line gives us observations. And if we just go for the natural plus volcanic and solar, then the models predict these numbers. That means the current numbers which we are observing as increase in temperature on Earth's surface is primarily because of the addition of the GHGs. And the models are able to very well project it in future. With multimodal simulations, we are able to find that the dry number of days would increase. So it's not only change in the climate in terms of temperature, but it is also the increase or decrease in the rainfall. And not only that, when the rain would occur, it would be torrential rain, it would be downpour, it would be cloudburst. So there would be very, very heavy rainfall. And then there would be days together, there would be no rainfall. That is what is the projection in the climatic models. So variability of the rainfall is going to increase, whether or not the rain itself is increasing. There are different locations on Earth's surface where we find that the rainfall would increase. There would be places where the rainfall would decrease. But the major problem is the variability of the rainfall is going to increase. If we look at the precipitation intensity changes, we find that the intensity of the precipitation would change at different places along with the temperature. Now, what is the takeaway for us from this discussion? The discussion is there is no doubt that the temperature of the Earth is increasing. So the world is warming. Our models tell us that the warming is not natural. If we are trying to account for warming, it is due to the human emissions of greenhouse gases, that is human activities or anthropogenic emissions are the cause of global warming. This warming will cause other changes. The other changes which we said is change in the rainfall pattern, change in the wind pattern, hot and cold days, variability of the rainfall, drought, flooding, heavy rainfalls, landslides, sea level rise. So there are countless things that would happen, and all those put together, warming causing other changes, is the effect which we have to summarize as climate change and its effect. Due to these, there would be a wide range of impacts on our human settlements. Now that's the problem exposition which I wanted to set forth, that the Earth's climate system has demonstrably changed both on global and regional scales since the pre-industrial era. So it is primarily the industrialization and our economic activities, burning of the fossil fuel, which due to the human activities has resulted in climate change, and we need to worry about it. Now, what can we do about it? As I said, there are only two things that we can do about it, is either stop climate change from happening, that is, stop the gases that we are emitting. Human settlements can contribute substantially in doing this by changing our activities towards such resources where we are not emitting greenhouse gases. And second, we need to adapt, that is, we need to take care of our settlements, that if excessively heavy rainfall happens, we are ready, we are adapted to it so that our settlement is protected. If we are on coastal areas and we are projecting that sea level rise would happen, we have to prepare those settlements in such a way that if sea level rise is going to happen, how are we going to stop the important establishments from submergence? We are putting lots of infrastructure in coastal areas. We are putting new ports. We have railway lines. We have refineries. We have naval bases. All those would be affected by sea level rise. So while investing into any of these things, we have to take care that we have paid sufficient attention to likely changes and we are planning for these eventualities. Even if we are going to plan the city infrastructure, the stormwater infrastructure, have we taken into account the likely increase in variability and have we designed the stormwater drains accordingly? So we have to mitigate as well as we have to adapt. The biggest difference in these two things is mitigation action is such that it is a global benefit. If I reduce emission of gases in Bhopal, it is going to benefit whole of the earth. But adaptation is local. If I am going to take an action of preventing stormwater damage to infrastructure in Bhopal by changing the drains layout or by changing the capacity of the drains, it will not help Delhi or it would not help New York or it would not help any other city. It would help Bhopal only. So mitigation is a global good or global action. Adaptation is local good or local action. That is one major difference. Therefore, sometimes we are finding that the adaptation is preferred over mitigation, but I would say that both are necessary because we have to reduce the extent of the problem and we have to bring in a change whereby we are able to adapt to the situation. How much do we need to mitigate? The concentration of 450 parts per million of carbon dioxide equivalent gases would be a safer path. That is what scientists have projected. Let's come to a discussion on climate change and human settlements. I would just stop for a moment here. If there are any questions on the basics and the climate change that we have discussed, people can type in that in the chat box. Till now, I have not received any question, so I am moving on. Maybe just a minute if we can take. It's 11:30 and I can answer those questions on the previous discussion part. Okay, there are no questions, so I'm moving ahead with the climate change and human settlements discussion. Why do we need to worry about human settlements is we have about 1% of the surface area in cities. And we house about 50% of the world population on this 1% area. Cities consume somewhere around 75% of the world energy and they are responsible for about 80% of the greenhouse gas emissions. So if we are able to tackle our cities, we have tackled a large part of our problem. Therefore, the concentration on human settlements. Cities are major contributors and cities are majorly going to get affected. Within this urban population, when we try to look at who is going to get affected, when we are saying that the cities would be affected, it is actually urban populations that are already facing difficulties with extreme weather events. Now, all those areas which are prone to flooding, which have got higher vulnerability, which are actually located on non-habitable slopes or lands within the city, those are the areas which are going to get further affected if climate change impacts are to be considered. There would be disruption to urban livelihoods. We have seen it in Corona times. Now, Corona as a disaster actually tells us that it would be poorest of the poor in the society which get affected most by any eventuality. Because if their livelihood is disturbed, if rainfall stops a person from working, the livelihood is disturbed and the person has got a hand-to-mouth existence where even making good for daily food availability is going to be a problem. And in Corona times, everybody has seen that it is not the urban rich or it is not the persons who got a continuous stream of salary available to them they have been affected, but it is actually the poorest of the poor down below the ladder, standing on the first step of earning livelihood, they are affected most because it is a cascading effect. If industry closes, if business closes, they would try to reduce their costs, and the person down below whose livelihood is dependent on that activity would be affected. Similarly, location-wise here, we know that the coastal settlements and industry would show a higher vulnerability. Urban populations that cannot adapt, that means those who cannot move to a safer location, those would be affected. And urban populations which have got least resilience, they would be affected. Finally, what we are going to say is the climate stresses would be superimposed on the existing stresses in the cities. The cities are already facing lots of stresses in terms of infrastructure sufficiency, in terms of water availability, in terms of energy resources, in terms of transportation needs. The sectors which are vulnerable would be much more affected. So climate stress would be one more stress imposed on the already existing stresses in the cities. Let's take an Indian perspective of urban settlements in India. Are we on the right path? What we see is India has got different climatic zones where different type of climatic phenomena is seen. Moving on with this, we know that response to the climate change in different areas of India would be different. Therefore, what we would be needing would be regional studies or local studies to find out the effect on human settlements. We have close to 8,000 towns in 2011, and we had about 1/3 of the population living in urban area. And this is fast increasing. The largest of the large cities would be increasing in number. We have mega cities where we have a very high concentration of population. We have large number of big cities, and we have very large number of smaller towns. And we have to have independent strategies for all these, dependent on their scale and dependent on the location. So it's not that one solution would fit all the settlements. We would have to have different solutions which are location specific for the settlements if we are discussing adaptation. But if we are discussing mitigation, then we can have comparatively common, universally applicable solutions which are easy to develop but difficult to implement. And if we are discussing adaptation, then we have solutions which might be difficult to develop because they are location specific, and equally difficult to implement because implementation of those would require huge cost. If you are looking at the demographic transition from a very so-called sustainable rural habitat where we had least possible use of energy in terms of fossil fuels, we are moving to an urban paradigm where we have very high-rise, high energy intensive urban living lifestyle. And people with such lifestyle are increasing. So we have a dual problem in India where the people living in urban area are increasing, and urban area has got a lifestyle which consumes huge amount of energy. If we look at the age gender profile, then we still have a bigger problem in hand. 1970s, 2010, which we are currently experiencing, or 2030 and 2050, if we see, we had a very high population growth rate with very high number of young population and children. 2010, we have got a young population with a broad-based pyramid. By 2030, the base of the pyramid would start narrowing down. That means our population growth rate in terms of new births would decrease. So birth rate is going down here. And what we are finding is the younger population is increasing. So in next 20 years, we have got a... Somebody started presenting, if you can stop. Somebody shared the screen, if you can stop, please.
Participants, please take care of this type of issues.
Somebody has shared the screen. Please stop.
Please stop your presentation.
Somebody else has shared the screen. I can see a screen. Somebody's Gmail. Narayan Gopal Ghimire. Mr. Narayan Gopal Ghimire, can you please stop sharing your screen? Mr. Narayan Gopal Ghimire is typing something on screen. Can somebody help him? Is it visible to everybody now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Is it visible to everybody now?
Yes, sir.
Right. So what we are discussing is in 2010 and 2030, we are finding a problem that we have a very high demand for employment. So we'll have to increase our industrial activity and economic growth path so that this younger population gets employment when they reach their middle age. But by 2050, when this population passes to the dependent age group, the climate change would strike. So when we are looking at long-term sustainability of our actions and we are worried about sustainable cities, we have to worry about this broader understanding of what is going to happen. Now, if in future we are finding that when the climate change problem happens, we are actually going to have a crisis in terms of having a very large dependent population. Somebody raised a hand, I believe. Somebody wants to ask a question? There was a hand up if anybody wants to ask a question. Okay, let's move on. So in 2050 or 70, when we are expecting that the climate change problem would be actually hitting our settlements, we would be having a large dependent population. All of us would move to that age when we would be dependent on the younger population for our sustenance. So this is an additional stress in addition to the infrastructure stress that we are counting for. So especially in developing country like India, we have to account for this age gender profile change in future and the climate change effects. Let's move on how we are transforming our cities from the friendly neighborhood with walkable streets. We are modifying to large townships with drivable and motorable roads. From a friendly neighborhood shop where I could walk and buy things, we are moving to shopping malls. From a low density, low rise development, we are moving towards high density, high rise developments. In these transformations, are we missing the important point that we are paying least attention to what type of a climate stress this is going to cause? Our normal streets, urban streets would look like this, where there are large number of vehicles and less number of people on street. We expect that people should be on streets and the vehicles should be reduced. Is everything which is happening bad? No. Really, there is a good part that technology is helping us. If we look at the relationship between energy, carbon dioxide, and electricity. Our electricity is becoming cleaner. That means it is now less dependent on fossil fuels and there's more renewable getting added. And similarly, if we are looking at carbon intensity of our GDP, then we are finding that Indian economy is becoming much more cleaner over the years in comparison to the past. This is a good sign where we are actually saying the intensity of energy in terms of production is improving, electricity is becoming cleaner. So these are two good signs for us, and if we continue on those pathways, then it is going to help us. What we need to understand is, do we have actions which would be local in nature and they would be global in benefits? Can we have actions which are good from the point of view of adaptation as well as mitigation? If we have such actions, we would say those actions offer us co-benefits. Mitigation alone is difficult because it would be resisting the path of our changing energy technology or changing energy demand. It's very difficult to bring down our energy demand with growing economy. What we need to do is we need to modify the technology in such a way that we are able to meet our energy demands, but we do not emit so much. Now, what we are going to say is, if we are not working on co-benefits, then we are working isolatedly on mitigation aspect, where mitigation would be linked to the cleaner environments in the cities. It would also help us in reducing the heat stress, air pollution, and heat islanding effects. That is actually a local phenomenon. Now, if there is air pollution getting reduced because of some action, and it is also helping reducing GHG, that should be the action we should pick for. Because people in a city would benefit by reduction in local air pollution, whereas the global environment would benefit by reduction in GHGs. Now, almost all the land use categories that we have in our urban area are sources for some kind of emissions. Residential area, cooking energy. Transportation, no need to say that how much energy do we consume and how much air do we pollute. So every land use that we are going to create in the city, we have to pay attention that how is it going to help us in reduce the greenhouse gases. There are different sectors where mitigation initiatives can be taken. These mitigation initiatives can be in water, wastewater and solid waste, where we can install water conservation devices, we can have water recycling, we can have rainwater harvesting, we can have energy efficient pumps, we can have solid waste to biogas, we can have composting units, we can have landfill gas recovery, we can have waste recycling. There is nothing new in this. The surprising part is, when we are taking these actions, we are not intending to reduce greenhouse gases. What we are saying is, water conservation is going to help my city. I need water recycling and rainwater harvesting because there is water scarcity. That is the problem. What we need to discuss, and that is what I'm highlighting, is the co-benefits of these actions. That if I am going to go for rainwater harvesting, am I reducing greenhouse gases? If yes, that is the action in right direction. But if any action of meeting my local demand is going to add to greenhouse gases, that is not an action in the right direction. Now, in energy efficiency, if we are going for LEDs, if we are going for smart metering, if we are going for green buildings, about which you will be learning in the coming sessions, if we are going for energy efficiency targets, energy performance labeling, we are going to reduce the local pollution and we are going to save good amount of money. We are going to prevent the electricity crisis or energy crisis that we are facing in terms of shortage of electricity. If we are having targets of renewable energy, if we are going for solar water heating, or if we are going for solar photovoltaic, if we are going for distributed generation of electricity, it is not only for local benefits that we are doing it. If we are installing a solar water heating on my rooftop, or if I have got a rooftop photovoltaic, it's not saving electricity bill for me only. It is actually going to benefit the earth in terms of reducing greenhouse gases. So we have to look for such actions whether these particular actions would help us in reducing the global burden. Now let's come to transportation. Here, I would like to flag a little controversial discussion, which some people agree, some do not. There is a discussion happening that we would be going for electric vehicles in cities. Now, here we have to pay an attention that electric vehicles are primarily going to solve, that is alternate fuel vehicles, our local pollution problem. So heat coming out from the exhausts, the pollution coming out from the vehicles on our urban areas is going to get reduced. But the electricity that we are going to get for charging these vehicles, if it comes from the fossil fuels, if it comes from the coal-fired power plants, it is actually not going to help the global community in terms of reduction of the greenhouse gases. It is possible that actually contribution of greenhouse gases from transportation may increase if there are a large number of electric vehicles, because there would be charging inefficiencies involved. Rather than consuming petrofuels directly by burning into vehicles, we would be burning those fossil fuels in production of the electricity. There would be losses. Transmitting that electricity to urban areas, there would be losses. Charging our battery from that electricity, there would be losses, because every transition from one form of energy storage to another form of the energy storage results in losses. So though EV is an important step in bringing down pollution, noise, and heat in urban areas, if we are not generating that electricity from renewable energy sources, then it might be counterproductive to greenhouse gas emissions. In place of that, if we are thinking of alternate fuel of vehicles, which might be hydrogen, which might be fuel cells, we might be actually solving both the problems. If we are looking for transit-oriented development, if we are looking for pedestrian and cycle-friendly development, these are going to solve both the problems, because pedestrian and cycle-friendly development would reduce the local pollution because there would be less of vehicle demand. It would also solve the global problem of reducing the greenhouse gases. So what I'm trying to suggest over here is, when we are taking different actions at local level, we need to pay attention to whether we would be actually taking actions which are in line with our priorities of reducing greenhouse gases. This report is available everywhere. I often cite this report because here we try to take a look at urban level discussion. There are very few reports available with such detail, maybe 50 or 60 cities across the world, 2 from India, Ahmedabad and Bhopal, on which such reports have been prepared, with futuristic modeling of likely emissions and how different actions would help us in bringing down those emissions. Here in case of Bhopal, we tried to give a target of reduction of 40% of greenhouse gases by the year 2035 in comparison to the business as usual scenario. That if we don't do anything, the amount of emissions that would come from Bhopal in year 2035, we tried to take certain actions and we recalculated the effect of those actions so that we are able to bring down the 2035 emissions by 40%. There are very few reports at such urban level available across the world. I have come across only about 50 or 60 such reports where some modeling exercise has been done at urban level. At regional and national level, there are many such reports available. We could identify that in case of Bhopal, there are different actions that can be taken primarily in passenger and freight transport. That's why I was focusing on EV, because we studied the effect of electric vehicles and reduction in local emissions in Bhopal. In that, there's lots of work happening in this sector because government has declared that by 2030 we should try and phase out other than electric vehicles. So that's a big action for transport sector. and effect on emissions are being studied at different levels in many cities. Here we try to look at the passenger as well as freight transport. We also try to take a look at how much emission reduction can happen from residential sector, industrial sector, and commercial sector. Our results indicated that there would be fuel switching which would be required, and primarily the technology efficiency improvement. These are the two things which would help us in bringing down the emission across these sectors in Bhopal by 2035. What we said that only these technology actions would not be sufficient, but we have to have a clear mandate and a mindset towards becoming environment friendly, towards becoming more sustainable, where we suggested these 7 actions. These are conceptual in nature, and we tried and identify that what all sectors would be affected by these 7 actions. We said that the governance need to become green. The habitat has to be with mixed land use, holistic habitat, where all activities are present. So a differentiation between a place of work and place of residence is actually going to increase the transportation needs. The lifestyle needs to become more sustainable in terms of people's choice of walking or bicycling or being more environmental friendly, for which there would be awareness and other things that would be needed. For Bhopal planning, given the topography, what we had suggested that it would be a cellular city. That means there would be independent neighborhoods which would be connected by each other. That's because of the topography, undulations. So there are hilly areas, there are water areas, there are forested areas, and there are plains where the city can develop. The form and flow of the city would have to be guided by transportation networks. So metro development is one welcoming thing. BRTS was one good thing. Somehow that has not become successful, but our suggestions say that BRTS is a useful thing for Bhopal city given the form and flow. For Bhopal, important aspect would be nurturing its nature, because nature has endowed lots of things to the surroundings of Bhopal with good amount of forested area and water bodies. Both needs to be nurtured. What we find that Bhopal is fast converting its rural areas to urban. If we can sustain those rural areas as rural in nature and maintain the agriculture land, therefore what we would need to go for would be a high-rise, high-density development with sparing the agriculture land in the surroundings as much as possible. That would be a step in the right direction for the city. We can create such strategies for each individual city. Coming towards the end, what I'm trying to say is sustainable development is not a thing where we would be saying that we have to control our economic activities or our livelihoods in any way. What we are trying to say is the frontier which is blocking us in terms of the environmental quality and economic indicators, we need to push that forward, whereby our environmental quality also improves and our economic and social indicators also improve. So a developing country has to focus on improving its economic and social indicators, but the cause of worry is the environmental quality. We need not move on this frontier only, exchanging between one to the other, but we have to push this curve forward. That is where technology, institutional innovations, and the co-benefits which I suggested are going to help us. To achieve this path, there would be innovations that would be needed, co-benefits which would be needed, and the sustainable actions that we need to take, those would be needed. So these are the 3 broad conceptual things that are possible for us if without affecting our economic progress, if we want to improve our environment quality. The response mechanism, which broadly can be highlighted, is any developmental action that we are going to put has to be in the context of climate change. We cannot take any action today if we are not thinking of how that action would be affected by climate change or how our action would affect the climate change. We have to link climate change to all our services and tasks, especially in case of cities. The facilities and linkages against extreme weather related events have to be built up. That's like stockpiling. That's like creating storage spaces. That's like disaster management, where we would be able to identify the locations where we would have to move people in case of any extreme weather related phenomena happens. We might need to change our building codes and standards. We have to plan for likely increase in demands. We have to pay attention to security of transportation.
Hello, am I audible, sir?
Yes.
Hello. Hello.
Boliye, yes, you are audible. Charumitra madam, you are audible. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are. You can continue, I think.
Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. I'm just coming towards the end of my presentation, where I would like to highlight that financial mechanisms would also need to be changed, where we would have to increase the resiliency in our cities. That is, we have to take care even of risk financing and risk mitigation. So if the damages are happening, then even the insurance sector would have to come in. As we have now realized that health insurance is one important thing, similarly, our infrastructure insurance would also be one important thing that we would have to take up. Then we would have to have a shared response and awareness building amongst the people, and we would have to work out specific local adaptation requirements for each of the city. These are the references that I have. I'm receiving a call from Charumitra madam. You can speak here on the group also. I'm just pausing it. Yeah, maybe a problem at your end. Others are able to listen.
So we are able to listen.
She was not able to listen, so she thought that there is some network disconnect or something. So I'll just continue with my presentation. And there is just one last slide which is remaining. These are different resources where we can look for more information. From climate change point of view, the best site which is available to us is United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. That's like a umbrella thing where all discussions, all international negotiations, everything happens under that. So it's a convention which has been signed by the countries, and most of the information related to all different types of protocols and agreements is available on this. IPCC.ch is Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. They bring out different assessment reports. These reports provide you current up-to-date information. There are 5 reports which have come up till now. The 6th report is in process. Different sector-related reports and chapters are there. So if you are interested in human settlement-related assessments from the mitigation point of view or impact and adaptation, you'd have to look for Working Group 2 and Working Group 3 reports at ipcc.ch. This 2050 at .nees.go.jp is the city case studies which I was discussing, from which I presented this Bhopal study. The GEF.org is actually the financing mechanism, the largest financing available for any climate related works, climate change related works. And IGES or .or.jp is an environment research facility. If people want to take up projects or if you want to see what kind of research is happening, then this is one good resource. In India, it is primarily the Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change website where most of the information is available. And moving to the, it is stopping me from moving to the next slide. I don't know why. Yeah, the last slide where we have few questions for ourselves to be asked. Are the government schemes in line with low carbon guidelines? If as an architect we are designing a building, are our buildings green? As a urban resident, is my lifestyle ready to cope up with low carbon guidelines? If I am an urban designer, the city form that I am going to create, is it energy efficient? Am I looking at the likely climate change impacts that my city form would have? If I am working with the local government, municipalities, municipal corporations, the steps that I am going to take for improving my city, am I equipped to take the steps related to climate change? And financing mechanisms which we have, do we have projects going on? Because the climate change related projects, the adaptation projects or mitigation projects have got a long gestation and long recovery period. What we need is, I'm suggesting a paradigm shift from project approach to holistic approach. In one single sentence, if I want to summarize the discussion towards sustainable, climate-friendly cities, then I would like to summarize that any action that we take today for any future activity, we just need to judge it through a lens of climate change. In what side it is going to take us? Is it going to make the climate change worse, or it is going to help us in mitigate climate change? Just that one sentence or one check will help us in a long way in developing climate friendly and sustainable cities. I'm stopping there. I don't see any questions in the chat box. I'm just seeing one hand up.
Yeah.
So,
Can I ask something from you?
Yeah, please, directly you can speak.
Yeah. Like your presentation was absolutely fabulous. It reminded me one of the news which I read today morning. I mean, I'm from Indore, an architect. There was a news in the morning that one of the industrial sector, which is Saver, one of the oldest industrial sector in Indore, almost 30 years old. When the underground water was collected from that area, almost 5 other places where the samples were collected, the water was not drinkable. So that's a kind of change which has happened in the underground water table. The water is not habitable. I mean, it's a question mark on all the people who are residing in that areas and drinking water from the borewells. I mean, something wrong happening definitely in the future, seems like. And even the government is worried now, okay, what to do and how to control on this part. So we all know that industries are growing and the climate is changing, that's for sure. But how will you guide us on this part? I mean, how should the government should take care of this part? Because I'm also part of consultant from the smart city. So how can I guide them a little more ahead so that all these things get rectified at an earliest?
Okay, I would relate it and tell you the difference between the problem that you are highlighting as a groundwater pollution and air pollution, which I was discussing as climate change. It is not to trivialize the problem of groundwater contamination. That is a big problem locally, but globally that is not a big problem. Reason is very, very simple, that the course of action is very clearly identifiable. If I stop contaminating the groundwater, the problem would go away in few years, because there is good amount of percolation happening. That percolating water is contaminated, therefore the groundwater is getting contaminated.
Okay.
Right? So these are comparatively shorter run problems. The water pollution or air pollution problem. In urban area, if I am having water pollution in any source, if I stop the source of pollution, the problem would go away. I have a noise pollution problem. I stop that source, the problem would go away. I have an air pollution problem because of traffic, transportation or vehicles or industry. I stop that industry from emitting pollution, the problem would go away. But there are certain problems which are long-term environmental problems. Say, for example, nuclear problem. A nuclear disaster happens today. Even if I stop the radiation going out today, it is going to affect my generations. Climate change is actually a problem in that scope of work. If I stop emitting the greenhouse gases today, the earth is not going to cool down. It will still take 100 years to cool down. Right? That is why I focused, when we are thinking on long-term sustainability, that's why I have focused on climate change. I'm not saying that the other problems are any smaller, but they are in a different class of problem. If we remove the source of pollution, the problem goes away, is a local pollution problem which is manageable.
Right.
Water pollution, if you are saying, we just have to take out the source. We have to identify where from the pollution is coming and stop that. The problem would resolve.
Right.
The biggest problem in such cases is the implementation. That identifying those industries and forcing them to stop is an implementation problem. It is not a policy or action problem.
Okay.
So the failure is in the part of implementing the policies. The policies are in place. So the major problem in case of underground water pollution is our failure to implement. The problem is not big.
Right. And even what I feel like changing on the air quality part of it, the government has now initiative that one should stop the vehicles at the signals rather than keeping it on, so that the air quality index improves. We have even working out one of the proposal we have put up to the commissioner, where we have planning to make the city signal free city. I mean, most of the signals, how to omit it up. So we have worked out some proposals, and possibly very soon might be implementing on the same, because that is definitely going to change it and air quality index for sure.
Next 8 to 10 years, if we are actually implementing the electric vehicles policy, and if we are able to achieve that, then the air pollution problem from traffic in urban areas is going to get resolved very, very fast.
Right.
The noise problem would go away. The heat islanding problem would be reduced. So EV is beneficial in many ways, because the exhaust gases are also heating our environment. The exhaust gases are causing pollution, and the engines, so many vehicles running on roads, is a noise pollution source. And in case of electric vehicle, all three would be solved.
Right.
But in case of electric vehicles, climate change problem would not be solved.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Anybody else would like to ask any question? I'm exceeding my time. It's 12:08 already. So maybe somebody from organizers can take care of the coming up session.
Very informative session, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
I can be contacted by writing an email to me. My email was visible on the last screen. You can write to me at kapshem@manet.ac.in. I would have to close this session. If there are any pressing questions, if somebody wants to ask, may quickly ask. I don't know who is coordinating this session from the organizers' side.
Sir, yes, I am Charuvitra Patil. Sir, yes, the session will go up to 12:30. We have sufficient time for question answers.
Okay. So then we can go on. There's no problem. I can have open discussions. I thought that it was 1 hour session, so I restricted my presentation to 50 minutes, and then we went on for questions. We can have more questions. There is no problem. Open-ended from basics. I can go back to slides if there is any question anybody wants to ask. Anybody has any question?
Please don't hesitate to ask any type of question.
Yes, Brijban.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sir, you touched upon one of the point that, is our lifestyle,
Right.
we have to change our lifestyle, as per the looking into the global aspects of climate change. But, as we're living in the urban context and, changing one lifestyle, let us say if I change my lifestyle, but then I also have to cope up with the things where I am working. And so how this lifestyle change can be integrated, so that we can come close to nature, or how?
No. That is not the meaning of changing the lifestyle. I jokingly tell people that then the best lifestyle would be going back to the forest and plucking fruits from the trees and eating it. That would be most sustainable, because you would not require any energy. You would not be causing any kind of pollution. But obviously in an urban area, we cannot change our lifestyle to not cooking food or changing our eating habits. That would be demanding too much. Ideally, yes, if we go back to our rural habitat and start eating directly from the trees, a good amount of energy on cooking would be saved. Changing in the lifestyle does not mean that we have to create any kind of discomfort for ourselves. What it means is we have to find out the pathways or the ways of doing things where wasteful expenses are reduced. As rightly said in the previous discussion, that I want to run a vehicle, I want to transport myself from one place to another. If I am keeping my engine running on a red light, I am not contributing to anything, but I am damaging only. So the change in the lifestyle is understanding it that if I switch off the engine at a red light, I am saving fuel, which is beneficial for me because it is hard-earned money which I am spending on fuel. It is benefiting to the environment as well because I am polluting less. Now, that is a change in the lifestyle of a person where a person is made aware that his small action is beneficial for everybody. Now, similarly, these things actually go to very, very micro level. It might sound a little odd, but if we look at our own habits, in the morning when I'm brushing my teeth, if I keep the water tap open, that is wastage. If I am taking out things directly from refrigerator and putting it in microwave oven, or if I am putting it on a gas stove, I am wasting good amount of energy. That is what is meant by change in the lifestyle. Now, change in the lifestyle on a larger level, there are very, very interesting studies. May sound absurd in Indian situation. Can we have community kitchens? In fact, the cooking energy consumption goes down if we start eating out. A large scale cooking of food is much more energy efficient in comparison to every family cooking their food. People have gone to that extent whether it would be viable for people to buy their food, reheat and eat. That might reduce expenses in terms of the energy consumption on food. Nobody is suggesting that kind of drastic changes in the lifestyle, but it is people being aware of how their actions can help or harm the environment. That is what is meant by sustainable lifestyle. If just by not using my two-wheeler or four-wheeler for going to the neighborhood shop, I can avoid one trip. I am saving money. I am more healthy because I am walking and I am helping the environment as well. But how often are we doing that? If I am carrying a bag from my house and not buying things in disposable plastic, am I helping the environment? The lifestyle change is at that small level, and that's why it is most difficult thing to do. Putting up a policy that PUC check is important so that the pollution on the city street goes down. Saying that the industrial pollution standards have to be strictly met. Saying that in place of Bharat 4, we would be moving towards higher pollution standards is very, very easy to implement. It's straightforward. But it has got less effect in comparison to awareness building amongst the people and making people sensitive more towards their environment. Rijwan, am I making myself clear that lifestyle change is very, very effective in terms of the output, but is very, very difficult to implement because implementation agency is not one. If there are 20 lakh people in Bhopal, each of them has to take this action. तो हमें 20 लाख जगहों पे ये action लेना पड़ेगा. Whereas if I am saying industrial pollution needs to be stopped, it would be one place where I would have to control one power plant from where the carbon dioxide emission can be controlled. Right? Therefore, lifestyle change is very, very important but difficult to implement.
Yes.
Right? You asked a very good question because that somehow got ignored. The importance of this was ignored in my presentation. I did not dwell in detail on what is meant by the lifestyle changes.
Thank you, sir.
Any other question, please?
Sir, my question is, couldn't we make the restriction on the purchase of vehicles by a single family? Many of the members of a single family have independent four-wheelers and bikes. Couldn't we make any policy on this also?
Charmitra, how would that help in the environment?
Because everyone is using independently their own vehicle.
Yes. So if we restrict the number of vehicles, it's not going to benefit the environment in any way. Because the vehicle is used only when it is needed. Vehicle does not.
Yes, sir, but the carpooling can be done
yes.
with a single vehicle.
Rather than having restrictive practices, we can have encouraging practices where car sharing, I would say, not carpooling. As in case of Ola or these apps, we had car sharing, that one person who is traveling from one spot to another spot can also pick up other persons. So rather than having one independent trip, there are three people who are taking the trip together. They are sharing the cost and they are sharing the vehicle. Such practices are much more useful now, which can be facilitated by the technology. हमें 4 लोगों को एक जगह से दूसरी जगह जाना है. We cannot ask each other, right? But a car sharing can be accomplished with the help of technology. So rather than putting a restrictive thing that people cannot buy vehicles, if we can enable them to share their resources, that would be much more a positive direction. Because restrictive practices do not help. I would not like to criticize the Delhi government for taking the action of odd even vehicle running. What would that result in is people would buy twice the number of vehicles. So odd number running and even number running, a person would like to own 2 vehicles so that I can use one vehicle on odd number, the other vehicle on even number day. In a longer run, this may not help. In a shorter run, it would be a good policy because half the number of vehicles would be on streets on a day. So if I'm implementing this type of policy, restrictive policy of vehicles running on odd number or even number, it might help me in shorter run. But in longer run, everybody would like to have 2 vehicles, one with odd number, one with even number. So Charumitra, similarly, if we are putting some restrictive practices, those would help us only in short run. Because people would find out a way of subverting or diverting those policies and finding out of a way of making their life easier. So it is always better in case of policies to have encouraging policies rather than restrictive policies.
I happen to read somewhere that one of the country, they made the public transport absolutely free in the morning and the evening schedule when there's a peak time, so that they want to discourage more and more cars and 4-wheelers on the road.
Absolutely. I would go with you rather than restricting the vehicles to come onto the road. If you can attract people towards public transport by incentivizing the use of public transport, that would be much more successful in comparison to restricting the private vehicles on the road. It's actually a comparison. And if we are looking at public transport today, I would like to give one more simple calculation. If I am traveling by train, a metro train, or if I am traveling by BRTS, or if I am taking any public transport in a city, and 2 of us are traveling, the ticket or the pricing which I have to pay and the inconvenience of walking from bus stop to my origin or destination, in comparison to that, if I take a 2-wheeler, somehow the cost is less than paying for the public transport. So a person in such a situation would always like to take a private transport, a 2-wheeler. Maybe a 4-wheeler is expensive, but a 2-wheeler 100cc motorcycle with high fuel efficiency would give me a much cost-effective solution of transporting myself from one place in the city to the other place in the city in comparison to using a public transport. So you rightly said that we have to make the public transport more attractive rather than restricting the private transport. That would be a step in right direction.
Good morning, sir. Can I ask?
Please.
Yeah. Sir, one important takeaway from your lecture today, I got that in order to improve our sensitivity towards environmental sustainability, we can do by two things. One is by mitigation and one is by adaptation. And today I realized that by mitigation, the effect is at global level, and by adaptation, the effect is at local level. I noted today only. Now my question is, since most of us are teaching in diploma students who are in an age group of 15 to 18 years, please guide us. How can we teach this in technical education? Just how to motivate students in mitigation and adaptation at the lower level of diploma students. I hope I'm clear.
Sure. What I'm trying to tell over here is if we are specifically looking at any problem, any environmental issue, there would be two sides of it. One is either we reduce that environmental problem, or second, if the environmental problem is there, how do we deal with it? In that sense, you can teach mitigation and adaptation. Mitigation and adaptation is specific to climate change. But any environmental issue that you are going to take up, there are two sides of it. One is reducing the problem, or second, learning to live with that problem. Take up example of water pollution, take up example of air pollution, take up example of noise pollution. Any of the environmental issues would always have these two sides. Now, the subjects that you might be teaching, in that, if you have any environment sustenance issue, break down the problem in these two parts, where you have the cause because of which the problem is happening. How do we reduce the problem source, focus on that and teach them that as mitigation, and go on to the other side, that if this problem is happening, what kind of impacts this problem is going to cause, and are there any ways or means by which we can cope up with the problem. That can be taught as impact adaptation discussion on any environmental problem. And in both the cases here, due to climate change, we are saying that mitigation is a global benefit. Whereas if we are discussing a local environmental problem, then mitigation and adaptation both would be local. So if I am saying water pollution, whether I am reducing water pollution or I am learning to live with the water pollution. Let me take a very simple example of water pollution itself. If we are saying that, then the mitigation side would be, how do we stop the contamination of the water? Or how do we improve the quality of the water? That is the mitigation side. If the water is not potable, how do we treat it and make it potable is the adaptation side. Both are local here. Both involve cost. So which one is better in which particular situation would depend on the type of problem that we are facing. So at education level, for discussing with the students, you can take this analogy for any environmental problem. The major difference would be, in case of climate change, mitigation is global. But in case of all other problems, mitigation would also be local and adaptation would also be local.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, I can see your hand up. Anybody wants to say anything else? Your microphone is muted. I can see a hand up from Kimi Prasad.
Yes, sir. I am from Jharkhand. Sir, in Dhanbad area, open cost mining here degraded our environment, sir. तो इसके लिए क्या करना चाहिए कि वो हमारा संरक्षण हो environment का, सर?
हाँ, इसमें भी जैसे अभी हम चर्चा कर रहे थे कि हम मिटिगेशन एफर्ट्स और अडेप्टेशन एफर्ट्स, जो हमने दो तरीके की बात की किसी भी एनवायरमेंटल एक्शन के लिए, कि हम उस एनवायरमेंट प्रॉब्लम को कम करने के कुछ तरीके हो सकते हैं, जहां पे हम ओपन कास्ट माइनिंग को कंट्रोल करें, या तो उसका एरियाज
Yes.
रिस्ट्रिक्ट करें ताकि हम उससे होने वाले पर्यावरण के दुष्प्रभाव को कम कर सकें। और दूसरा है
Yes,
जहां
sir.
कास्ट माइनिंग से डिग्रेडेशन हो चुका है,
Yes, sir.
जहां इम्पैक्ट हो चुका है, वहां पे हमें अडेप्टेशन की कोशिश करनी पड़ेगी ताकि जो हमारा एनवायरमेंट आसपास का खराब हो चुका है ओपन कास्ट माइनिंग के कारण, उसको रिस्टोर
Yes,
करने
sir.
के लिए हम क्या प्रयास कर सकते हैं।
Yes, sir. So
और
thank you, sir.
दो तरीके के प्रयास हमें हर जगह करने पड़ेंगे। एक जहां पे
Yes,
हम
sir.
हमारी समस्या को कम करने की कोशिश करें, और
Yes, sir.
दूसरा समस्या के हुए दुष्परिणामों को कम करने का प्रयास करें। तो मेरा सजेशन ये
Yes.
था कि हमें दो तरीके
Yes.
से सोचना पड़ेगा हर समस्या के लिए।
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you.
थैंक यू।
Okay, any more questions from anyone? Okay, I think no more questions are there. And I heartily thank Kapshe sir for very interactive and interesting session. And you have presented the data which shows the gravity of this environmental issue. And your presentation was very interesting. All the participants were deeply engaged and made us to think what are the problems and how to deal with these problems and what kind of action we could take in future. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
सभी को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। एंड it was a session that I enjoyed. The questions were very, very pinpointed and initiated a good discussion. Thank you everybody for participation.
Thank you very much, sir. Now we will have lunch break from lunch break till 1 o'clock, and after that at 1 o'clock there will be a lecture by Dr. Tej Karki from Lovely Professional University, and in between we will share with you the link for the your attendance on this WhatsApp group. So please be sure to make your attendance, and we will join back at 1 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you everybody.